Hi friends, welcome back to 5 Minute Modern. My name is Cindy, and today we're continuing our look at Picasso by examining his rapid stylistic evolutions in the years during and after World War I. In my last video, we talked about the first phase of Cubism called Analytical Cubism, in which Picasso and Braque worked to dissect images into small, flat planes, which were then combined to show multiple viewpoints all at once. This phase of Cubism was brought to an early halt by the start of World War I in 1914. Braque was drafted into the French army, and Picasso's longtime dealer and greatest champion, Daniel Henry Kahnweiler, was forced to seek exile in Switzerland due to his German citizenship. Isolated from his most important colleague and his most important gallerist, Picasso forged ahead on his own. In 1914, he began experimenting with adding colored dots to his Cubist compositions, in a style now known as confetti cubism. These works were partially inspired by the pointillist painters Georges Seurat and Paul Signac, who theorized that by separating rather than blending contrasting colors over a white background, the overall composition would become brighter and more vibrant. Though, as historian Rebecca Rabinow noted, it's also likely that confetti cubism was partially inspired by literal confetti, which by then had become a mainstay of jubilant festivities like Carnival. And Picasso had reason to be jubilant in spite of the war. In 1911, just as Picasso's relationship with Fernand Olivier was beginning to disintegrate, he met Eva Guel and began a relationship with her shortly thereafter. Picasso was always preoccupied with his romantic relationships, so it's likely that his domestic bliss with Guel buoyed his mood even as Europe was roiled by war. I think we can see further evidence of Picasso's contentment in his expanded color palette. Moving beyond the uniform earth tones of analytical cubism, Picasso painted with brighter hues pulled from an expanded range. As the color palette of Picasso's work expanded, he returned to the strategy he'd pursued in Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, simplifying the forms that he painted. Rather than trying to capture as many different picture planes as possible, Picasso focused on a few larger, simplified planes, still overlapping them together. Towards the end of analytical cubism, Picasso had begun incorporating collage elements like newspapers, highlighting the way various visual planes had been assembled together to form the image. Focusing less on the different viewpoints and more on the way those viewpoints were assembled together helped inspire the name for this next phase of Cubism, called Synthetic Cubism by Kahnweiler, owing to the way in which various picture planes were synthesized together. Synthetic Cubism was an important forerunner to the assemblage techniques explored by artists like Kurt Schwitters. And personally, I find these works to be incredibly beautiful. Picasso continued to work in a vibrant color palette, even as his mood turned. In 1915, Eva Guel died of an illness, leaving Picasso temporarily heartbroken. Meanwhile, World War I continued to drag on, spoiling the optimism that many had held in its early months. As the war dragged on, many in Paris began to reject Cubism as being anti-French, owing to the movement's early support by the German-born Kahnweiler. Still, by 1917, Picasso had fallen in love again, this time with the Russian ballerina Olga Koklova, who he met while designing costumes and sets for Sergei Diaghilev's ballet company. Koklova became Picasso's first wife in 1918. Also in 1918, World War I finally came to an end with the German surrender. As the full devastation wrought by the war became apparent, Picasso joined with other artists in a movement to reject the modernism that had flourished in the years before 1914, and embrace classical styles of painting in a movement called the Return to Order. While Picasso painted a number of beautiful classical works, it's clear that he only ever half-embraced the movement. During a particularly productive summer in Fontainebleau in 1921, Picasso painted both the neoclassical Three Women at the Spring and the synthetic cubist Three Musicians. For Picasso to paint a work like Three Musicians, which was on the cutting edge of modernism, at the same time that he was working on a neoclassical work like Three Women at the Spring, tells me that he wasn't interested in returning to order so much as finding yet another art style to explore. And perhaps that's why Picasso was intrigued by the Surrealist movement started by André Breton in 1924. In order to give legitimacy to his movement, Breton claimed many writers and artists as Surrealists, ranging from Picasso and Marcel Duchamp to the long-dead Arthur Rimbaud. Picasso never formally joined the Surrealists, but rather than being upset with Breton for trying to draft him into the movement anyway, Picasso began experimenting with the Surrealist ideas of symbolism, anthropomorphism, and expressing the unconscious. In the space of just about a decade, Picasso had explored analytical, confetti, and synthetic styles of Cubism, as well as neoclassicism, and finally, Surrealism. If you want to understand why Picasso is so widely held to be one of the greatest artists of all time, I think this period holds the answer. He constantly sought to innovate, moving his work forward with new techniques and new styles. Never content with his practice as it was, Picasso was always pushing the boundaries of art forward. Thanks so much for watching this one. I hope you're enjoying the series on Picasso, and as always, I hope you learned something new. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.